Back here in HQ Spotlight, we are in March Madness mode. Of course, the tournament kicking off tomorrow with some first four games in action tonight. You're looking at the 1, 2, and 3 seeds in the tournament. On the one line, Auburn, the #1 overall seed, with Duke, Houston, and Florida joining the one line there. The 2 seeds, Michigan State, Bama, Tennessee, and St. John's. And then on the 3 line, Iowa State out of the South, Wisconsin in the East region, Kentucky in the Midwest, and Texas Tech in the West. And that's how the committee sees it, but we're going to ask Kyle Boone to give us his top teams. And we are starting on the one line, Kyle, because I felt like leading up to conference tournament time, it was just back and forth for the #1 overall seed. It's going to be Duke or it's going to be Auburn. Ends up going to Auburn. You were going with Duke as the best team on the one line. Does that have to do with how they're playing recently, or are we looking at the entire body of work for both of these teams?
Yeah, actually, Jacqueline, my take here is actually Duke has been the better team for most of the season. And Duke beat Auburn earlier this year, as you may remember, in a head-to-head. That game was played in Durham on Duke's floor. But Duke has been statistically the most impressive team. Now, by comparison metrics, Auburn, the quad one, they are fantastic. But Duke has the best scoring margin in college basketball. They have the highest net ranking in college basketball. They're the only team that ranks top 5 in both offensive and defensive efficiency this season. And this is John Shire's 3rd year as head coach after taking over from Mike Krzyzewski. And, the first season that he had Duke, they were really elite on defense, but their offense kind of struggled. Last year, they were really elite on offense, but their defense kind of struggled. And, in a story that I actually published today, I'll give credit to The Athletic. He basically said, hey, what if we actually just kind of combine the two? What if we had a great offense and a great defense and married those two together? That's what we have here. I think it's the best team in the NCAA tournament. That's why they're my pick to win the 2025 NCAA tournament.
And now we know that Cooper Flagg is dealing with an ankle injury, a sprained ankle. We don't know for sure 100% if he's going to play in that first round. But if Cooper Flagg is not the same version of himself when he does play in the tournament, does that waver your decision making at all? Or I know what you were saying, the entire body of work, right? But it has to count for something if we're looking at them right here and now and the reality of Cooper Flagg dealing with an injury.
Yeah, it's going to play a huge role. There's no question about it. The pick and the basis around picking Duke is that Duke has the best player in college basketball. And, if the best player in college basketball is out, or even if he's just limited, instead of being 100%, he's only 70%, then I think that's a real problem for this Duke team. They're very deep. There's 4 other 5-stars on this roster. They have multiple guys who I think could end up going in the lottery of this summer's draft. So, I don't think anyone pities Duke because they have lots of talent. But I think the ceiling for this Duke team, if you don't have the best player in college basketball, obviously it's going to be lowered going into the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, to your point, in the ACC tourney, we saw Con Knippel really step up when Cooper Flagg wasn't on the court there. Let's go to the 2 line because technically, St. John's, I don't know if I want to say the worst 2 seed or, the most, they get the most non-favorable region. They're in the West, the 2 seed in the West, right? But they're the best 2 seed for you, which as a Florida Gator alum, the 1 seed in that same region makes me a little nervous that folks out there think that St. John's is potentially the best 2 seed.
Jacqueline, you should be nervous. I'm just going to say it. This St. John team is for real, and they're #1 in all of college basketball in defensive efficiency. They're really good at pounding the offensive glass, at generating second chance points. That has kind of been a Rick Pitino staple over the years. And, oh, by the way, Rick Pitino, as I mentioned, 72-year-old Hall of Famer. The old man has still got it. They've won 25 of their last 27 games. Earlier this season, Pitino talked about this team in reverential terms, talking about the way that they win just kind of defies analytics in a lot of ways. They're not really good at shooting 3-pointers. They don't shoot a ton of 3-pointers, but they're very physical. They're really relentless on the defensive side of the basketball court. And I think that's a resume and a recipe that can make this Johnny's team really dangerous in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, winning the Big East outright for the first time in a very, very long time. They certainly look like the real deal. We're going to switch things up and go to the 7 line, where Kansas, a team that has not had a great season under Bill Self standards, that is your top 7 seed. How did you get there, especially when you look at kind of the roller coaster of the season that we've seen from the Jayhawks?
A roller coaster is the exact word. In fact, you've probably been watching Bill Self's transcripts, because Bill Self earlier this season talked about roller coaster, and even this week before the NCAA tournament, he talked about this season being a roller coaster, and he even did the hand motion. So they started the year preseason number 1. They have had the worst season under Bill Self since he took over in 2003. There's no shying away from that, no question. But I think the talent there is still really well enough that this Kansas team could make an NCAA tournament run. He talked about earlier this week, everyone is 0-0 going into the NCAA tournament. Everyone gets a fresh slate. Yes, it's a cliche. It's a coachism, no question about it. But this is the lowest seeded Kansas team that Kansas has ever had under Bill Self. They get a fresh start. I think this team kind of wants to prove itself and prove that it belongs after being overlooked coming into the NCAA tournament. They have a lot of talent on this roster. I think if they put it together, they could make a real run, especially as a 7 seed. They'll get some favorable matchups in March Madness.
Yeah, we saw the results of the last 5 seasons in the tournament for Kansas, of course, winning it all in 2022, and the rest of the results not so favorable. Let's go to the 10 line, where Arkansas is in the conversation there under Coach Cal. They were kind of getting things right going into the SEC tournament there, but are they the top 10 seed, or is somebody else in mind for you?
Yeah, I actually think I like Vanderbilt quite a bit. I also think Arkansas is a good case here. Arkansas is an interesting one, Jacqueline, where they started the season in SEC play 0-5 with a star in the making in freshman Boogie Fland, who was fantastic. They ended up losing him for the season and end up rallying to make the NCAA tournament. For my money, I like Vanderbilt. This is a team that has the makings of potentially making a deep run. They beat 4 top 15 teams this season. They're under a first-year coach in Mark Byington. Very balanced team. Kind of got buried in a deep SEC this year, but I think the resume speaks for itself. When games are really at their peak, when they're playing some of the best competition in college basketball, they seem to find a way to get up for those big games. I think that bodes well for them in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, it's easy to get lost in your conference when you have 14 teams, which is a record, that are going to the big dance. Let's go to the 12 seeds. We're talking about Colorado State here, rattling off 10 straight wins. They had to win their conference tournament in order to get into the NCAA tournament. Why are they the top 12 seed for you? I might have just listed a couple reasons, but hit us with more, Kyle.
No, yeah, just keep going. This is great. This is great. Colorado State, yeah, they've won 10 in a row coming into the NCAA tournament. You go look at the betting markets right now. They're actually the only 12 seed favored over the 5 seed in the first round of the NCAA tournament. And, kind of the basis of picking Colorado State is they have a star. Nick Clifford is a star. During this 10-game winning streak, he's averaged 22 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists per game. He's hitting 56% of his threes during that span. He looks like an All-American. And, I think in the NCAA tournament, we kind of tend to rely on teams that are led by guards. You look at Kemba Walker and that historic UConn run long ago. I think Nick Clifford has a run in him that could take the Rams to real heights during the NCAA tournament. That team is very, very well positioned from that bracket, I think, to make a deep run as a 12 seed.
So, Kyle, we went through your top 1, the 2 seed on the 7 line. But if we kind of pull up your entire list here, are there any other teams that stick out to you that you really want to talk about?
Yeah, I'll highlight one here, Jacqueline, sticks out to me. I think it's Louisville. You look at the seed list here. They are the 8th seed in their region, and this is a team that I think a lot of bracketologists had projected as a potential 5 seed. And they've been very, very hot coming into the postseason. They've only lost twice, Jacqueline, in the last 3 months. They were challenging for the ACC title going into the final weekend of the regular season. They won 18 ACC games in the regular season. That set a record. They just advanced to their first ACC conference tournament title game. That's the first time they've ever done that. So this Cardinals team under Pat Kelsey, they've got some spunk to them. They've got some fire, some pizzazz. And I think the makings of this team, the way that they play, kind of mirrored in the image of their fiery head coach in Pat Kelsey. I'd look for the Louisville Cardinals to make a potential run in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, and if they beat Creighton, they get Auburn in Lexington. It's going to be essentially a home game for Louisville, so a potentially great matchup to look forward to. Kyle, we certainly appreciate it going through in his opinion, the best team on each line. All right, it's time to fill out those brackets and make sure you download the March Madness Live app so you can watch all of the action live on all of your favorite devices. Of course, it all kicks off. We are already into the first 4 games, and it goes all the way through to April 7th.